Hello students, today in this class we will discuss about the philosophies of Immanuel Kant, a Western philosopher from 1724 to 1804. But let me first introduce myself. I am Dr. Pushpa Kumari, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, SPM College for Women, University of Delhi. We are discussing in Module 8, Contribution of Western Philosophers. In this, we have already discussed three of our great philosophers, Plato, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Dewey, and today we will discuss Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804. After discussing about his philosophies and ideas, you would be able to evaluate and relate their educational thoughts and practices in present educational system. You would be able to apply his educational thoughts into various practices of education and teaching learning process. Now, the content of this lecture is arranged as: first we will discuss about the life sketch of Immanuel Kant, the concept of education given by Kant, aims of education, process of education, discipline, teaching methods given by him, the nature of education and school would be discussed, and the relevance to present education system would be discussed. Beginning with the life sketch of Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant was a great German philosopher, and he was born in Königsberg, Germany on 22nd April 1724. He studied Latin, Greek and theology. Experts in the history of German education describe the 18th century as the age of pedagogies. He developed a system based on the idea that in order to understand the nature of reality, one must just examine and analyze the reasoning process that governs the nature of experience. Further, the lecture, you will come to know that Kant's emphasis was on knowing about the nature of reality, the reasoning and also experience. He was a professor of logic and metaphysics. He believed in an objective, right and wrong based on reason. He expressed his views that only human beings need education out of all living beings. Education includes nurturing when the child is an infant, discipline when she or he grows up a little more, and training when she or he is able to understand instructions. So you can see that he has also given his ideas about education. When the child is an infant, he or she needs nurturing. When they grow up a little more, they need to be disciplined, taught discipline, and they need to be trained when they are able to understand instructions when they grow up more. Some of the famous educational works of Immanuel Kant are Critique of Pure Reason, Critique of Practical Reason, Metaphysics of Morals, etc. Now we will discuss about the concept of education as given by Kant. He said that all our knowledge begins with the senses. You can see that he gives a more importance to the senses, proceeds then to the understanding and ends with reason. There is nothing higher than the reason. So reasoning was so important for him. If education is to develop human nature so that it may attain the object of its being, it must involve the exercise of judgment. So judgment was also important for him. The concept of education given by Kant, Kant separates education in two, as moral and physical education. For him, physical education is only common way with feed and care, comparing human with animals. Physical and moral education teach us how a person lives as independent existence. Moral education, on the other hand, makes a citizen value for a state and a nation. It makes a person value as a person existence. So we can see that he emphasized both on moral and physical education, and though physical education means feed and care, but moral education is important for making a citizen value for a state and a nation. And here is the physical education which differentiate humans from animals. Instructions make a person worthy as an individual. By means of instruction, getting information helps to develop person's talent. Understanding is the knowledge of the general. Judgment is the application of the general to a particular, and reason is the power of understanding the connection between the general and the particular. So here we can see that while explaining the concept of education, he differentiates between general education and particular education. In general education, understanding is important, and when judgment is applied to general, it becomes particular. It is through education that all the good in the world arises, according to Kant. Or our knowledge begins with the senses, proceeds then to the understanding, and ends with reason. So there is nothing higher than reason. So reasoning is utmost important. Now moving on to the aims of education given by Immanuel Kant. Development of what is already there in the human beings, and that is natural goodness. Education is also continuous betterment of society through educated persons, thus ensuring better future. To develop all natural gifts of a human being is the true education. True education is to develop all the natural gifts of a human being. Good education feeds to the true perfection of human nature, which is naturally good. Its planning should be cosmopolitan and best. Children should be educated not only for the present but for the better future. So much of importance was given on true education and good education, so that children can be educated for a better future life. To maintain dignity of self and others by all individuals is also a very important aim of education given by Kant. He said that the sense of quality and respect for others should be instilled in children from an early age, so that they not only respect themselves but they also respect others in the society. Education relating to gradual improvement of the world should be provided by the educational institutions. So we can see that there is a great responsibility on educational institutions to provide a better, good moral education to all our learners, to prepare individuals for future world ethics. In this way, he wanted to develop global moral society where we can differentiate between the good and the bad. With regard to morality, Kant argued that the source of good lies not only in anything outside the human subject, either in nature or given by God, but rather is only the good will itself. A good will is one that acts from duty in accordance with the universal moral law that the autonomous human being freely gives itself. This law obliges one to treat humanity, understand as rational agency and represent it through oneself as well as others as an end in itself rather than as means to other ends the individual might hold. This necessitates self-reflection in which we universalize our reasons. Moving on to the process of education given by Kant. Kant gave his ideas on education of all age groups, that is, from infancy to adulthood into following different types, beginning with the basic education for infants and children, family education for adults, school education, university education, general adult education and senior citizen education. From this we can see that he has ideas on education for all the age groups of people. As per his views, the basic nature of the child should not be distorted by artificial means. Children need to be happy, open-hearted and their gaze as bright as the sun. Means the naturality of the children should be maintained. Children must not be restrained in their freedom, but at the same time due care must be taken so that they do not harm themselves and restrict freedom of others through their actions. Children must work as well as play. The importance is given to play. There is no need to abandon one for another and proper balance must be maintained. This means that the education can be achieved with play and work simultaneously. Now moving on to the concept of discipline given by Kant. Disciplined behavior and actions save human being falling in danger. In the early years, children need to be sent to school not for instructions but to learn to stay still and do what they are asked to do. In this way, they learn to discipline themselves, which must be difficult to be taught at home. So it is important for children to send to school to learn and discipline themselves, to socialize themselves with other children, which is difficult to be taught at home. This function needs to be performed by education, as God has already given power to human being for reason. Now the good and the bad of self depend upon themselves only. That means we have to make our learners also understand what is good and bad and to reason about the good and the bad. The basis of education needs to be cosmopolitan or international in nature so that world peace is established. This concept is quite contemporary since we all want world peace. About the teaching methods. Immanuel Kant believed that education differs from training in that the former involves thinking whereas the latter does not. In addition to educating reason, of central importance to him was the development of character and teaching of moral maxims. Kant was a proponent of public education and of learning by doing. Kant also emphasized on learning by doing. He also emphasized on morals, learning morals and reasoning, which should be based on reasoning. Education should not be a mechanical process, it should be a natural process. Methods of teaching and learning must stimulate the child to think. Keeping in view the above, the Kant advocated Socratic method for learning. Children may not be able to understand central propositions without help from the teachers. Means the role of teacher is also important. Teachers cannot instill perception of reason into children. Slowly it will come from within. Means the teachers, they cannot mechanically instill the perception of reasoning into children. Children slowly will learn that. The Socratic method should also be the basis for imparting mechanical instruction if needed, but Kant is not against natural inclinations, interest and pleasure, but these need to be exercised keeping in mind love for and well-being of other human beings. Now, about the nature of education and the nature of school, Kant gave his views. He said that Kant gave his views whether education should be provided by the state or by private institutions. Education should cater to the needs of the learners or stakeholders. For example, if rulers provide education, they will have welfare of the state into mind first and not development of the individuals through education. So, education should not be the responsibility of the rulers who may themselves be not educated and disciplined. They must provide funds for education, but not with the aim of making profit out of it. Private educational institutions must take up cause of educating youth for their personal and social development. So, this was the view about the public and private education given by Kant. Experimental schools. Kant talks about experimental schools and their importance. According to him, nothing should be taught before doing experiments on it so that it becomes worthy for teaching. For this, experimental schools are necessary. He emphasizes on experimental schools. In these schools, teachers should be free to try their content and the methods of teaching. Means they can try their content, their pedagogy, which they think will be appropriate for a certain age group of students. Only reason cannot establish suitability of material and methods of teaching. So, experimental schools should be established before the normal schools, and the experimental school he established is named as Dept. Now, we will discuss about the relevance of Immanuel Kant's philosophy and ideas to present education system. Influence on the aims of education. Kant believed that humanity acquisition and his realizing of savagery is possible just with education, and he affirms that edification should be a part of education. Also, he claims that ethical education, moral education, is the latest and the greatest level of education that, if accomplished, education will finish. The influence on curriculum. He says that curriculum must suit the age group of the children. Children learn better when curriculum fits their capabilities according to age, and through experience teachers can decide what the children are capable of learning at certain age group. Since we have discussed about the aims of education given by Immanuel Kant the methods of teaching, the process of education, all his ideas and philosophy related to education, the discipline, and we also discussed his relevance on contemporary time. We can discuss few of the questions for practice, like describe the process of education given by Immanuel Kant, explain the aims of education given by Kant, why did Kant emphasize upon opening experimental schools before general schools, a very important question to discuss, and then discuss Kant's view about public and private education, who can provide the public and private education to students, explain the concept of discipline according to Kant. So, here are the few questions for practice which I hope after listening to this lecture you all would be able to do it. Thank you so much. We will meet you again in the next lecture series. Thank you so much.